What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this awesome Switch 2 video, we have some really cool graphics comparisons and analysis to go over with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on Switch 2 and PlayStation 5. Yes, I said Rebirth. What am I talking about? Well, I have created a target demo specifically targeting the Switch 2 specs of what the game will likely look like running on the Switch 2 versus the PlayStation 5 version. I'll explain about that in just a second. I also have a graphics comparison of the Star Wars Outlaws demo running on Switch 2 versus the PC version at max settings on an RTX 5090. Yes, this is my own footage. I did download the demo. It's a free demo. You can try it yourself on both PC and Switch 2. We're doing an in-depth analysis of both of these games. And the reason why I do think that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will look fantastic on Switch 2 with some cutbacks, which we'll go over here. But it all stems from the interview that we'll talk about here from the director of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth and the entire trilogy. So if you do enjoy this content, guys, please hit the like button and we will get started right away. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming to Switch 2, and the director of the game is very excited for it, obviously. Naoki Hamaguchi talked about this recently in an interview, and some people were concerned about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, especially running on Switch 2, because the game did have some issues visually on PlayStation 5, but there's some weird things about that game on PlayStation 5. I do own the game. We'll talk about that in the graphics comparison, but he wanted to alleviate concerns that the game was going to run well on Switch 2, and he's very proud of what the work they've done with Final Fantasy VII Remake on Switch 2 already, thinking that basically it's going to be one of the really nice examples of the Switch 2's power, so to speak, and performance that it can do. We've already seen, of course, in Cyberpunk 2077 and Star Wars Outlaws, and we're going to see more of that as we go forward. Many people, though, are, skeptical on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and he basically said, though, that Nintendo players in the future, you really don't need to worry at all. They're going to get a version that is just as satisfying and just as high quality as the first game, if not higher. Wow. And he said he's very confident about the hopes to deliver in the not too distant future, but he's very confident that the game is going to look just as good, if not better, than Final Fantasy VII Remake. So what I've done here is that I've created a demonstration of a target demo for the Switch 2 for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'll go over why I do think this is probably going to be the closest thing to what we can expect a Switch 2 version to look like when it is released on the console. So, go into the settings here. You'll see that I have set the game to 1080p, 30 frames per second, with 50% on the scaling ratio for DLSS. And what that means is the game is running at 540p internally and upscaled to 1080p. I do think this is what Square Enix is going to be targeting for this game. On top of that, I put the background model detail at medium settings and everything else on low settings. Now, you may ask, well, why did you put the texture resolution so low? The Switch 2 has enough memory to do that, right? Well, yes, it does. But you can think of this as a, worst case scenario situation, pretty much from what the game already has built into it for low quality textures versus PlayStation 5. Yes, the Switch 2 could actually look a little bit better than this, but the reason why I think they may be going for these types of settings is because the file size for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is gigantic. It's 150 gigabytes on PC. So for them to compress the game a little lower on Switch 2, I do think they could get away with using lower quality textures, but nicely enough, these textures don't actually look bad. So let's take a look at this. 30 frames per second, 1080p, DLSS, not FSR. And then we're going to do the side-by-side comparison now with the PlayStation 5, okay? So, here it is. Now, what you'll notice right off the bat here on the Switch 2 version is that there's going to be pop-in. There's also pop-in on the PlayStation 5, though, okay? So, but with the medium setting, that is what you're going to get for the object detail as far as how close things render to the screen. So yes, you're going to get some pop in here. And but yeah, the game looks very similar to the PlayStation 5 version. Very similar draw distance, but you will have less grass being rendered, for example, like in these sections here. You're getting a little bit more muddied, less detailed rocks, but a lot of the detail is still there on other textures. And you're going to be getting a lot less things drawing in, you know, farther away. But overall, I would say this looks really good for what you could expect for a Switch 2 version. Now, what are the other drawbacks going to be, though? Well, if we go forward a little bit here in this footage, you're going to see, once we get into the cutscene area of this part here, basically more of the same type of stuff, where you're going to be seeing lower quality textures and even lower detailed models with lower polygons as well. Okay.
Seen those near the village, and they're not nice.
Lower detailed shadows, which is probably you could expect for a Switch 2 game. So shadows and the hair quality is going to look less detailed. That's a big thing for Switch 2, is the hair so far in these games have been the most noticeably poor graphical aspect that the Switch 2 has not been able to do. And likely that will continue for quite some time until the developers actually do put more of a focus on that. But as you can see here, if you look close, you can see that the hair on the lower settings here is more artifacty and less detailed. It's basically just being rendered at a lower resolution, right? But the character model, yeah, has a little bit lower quality textures as well. They're a little bit better on PS5. But you know, during the actual gameplay, without the side-by-sides, you may not notice much. Here yet again, there's lower quality textures here on the rocks, and there's no depth of field in certain areas, and the lighting is not quite as good. The actual lighting itself, not just shadows.
I guess not.
It could also be this a aspect of the PC port, having different lighting for the PC version. They could have slightly brighter lights than the PlayStation 5 version. I don't know for a fact there, but you can see right here that the textures in the rocks by Cloud's feet are less detailed. This would be something I would expect from a Switch 2 type of version. Not because the Switch 2 can't do higher quality textures. We know it can for games like Cyberpunk 2077 versus PS5. The textures are identical to the PS5 version. I don't think it'll be about that, though. I think because the file size is so gigantic, like I said, it could be possible they'll be going for a little bit lower quality textures, and they'll be able to get away with it because the game will still look great on its own merits. And quite possibly you'll get some more pop-in as well, like we've been seeing here, but not too bad. All right. Now, yep, another example right here, lower quality textures. But again, are you going to be noticing this too much during gameplay? Are you going to be really distracted by that? Maybe you'll notice something like that. But overall, if this is what the game will look like on Switch 2, which I think it has a really great chance of looking this way on Switch 2, it'll be looking really good thanks to DLSS. The image quality is what's going to really save it here, because rendering at 540p is really low. If that's what they're going for, that's 50% of 1080p. It'll be something like Street Fighter 6 on Switch 2, and you'll get a similar type of image quality, which will look really good, but you will have some jaggies here and there, especially on things like hair. See if we can get another example. Yeah, okay. Textures right here and right there. But yeah, basically, take me off the camera there for a second. But yeah, basically you can see here lower quality textures on the ground, and the pipe here as well is modeled with a lower polygon count than the pipe on the left side for PlayStation 5. And if we continue on though, basically the game overall, the Square Enix did a really good job on making the game look good, like good enough to run on lower spec hardware such as those, handhelds that we talked about. So quite possibly they may have been actually thinking about the Switch 2 when they were developing this game in the first place on PC, like a lower spec portable system like the Steam Deck. Also, you got to think about Nintendo probably talked to Square Enix years ago about their plans for Switch 2. So likely this game is well suited already to run on Switch 2 because of the graphical settings they already have in place on the PC version, and with things like DLSS on the Switch 2 make it so much better than the PlayStation 5 version in terms of image quality upscaling. Because you may or may not know this, but the PlayStation 5 version, the vanilla version of the game, not the PlayStation 5 Pro, which uses PSSR, PlayStation 5 vanilla version uses some form of nearest neighbor upscaling. It's not even FSR. It's not even TAA. It's just like some kind of weird basic upscaling. And it made the game look really blurry in its performance mode at 60 frames per second. It was barely even worth playing at that mode. Besides, the 60 frames was nice, but the game looked very blurry. So in the 4K mode, which upscaled it from a resolution that looked pretty good, like 1800p to 4K, it looks really good on PS5 that way. And yes, I do expect it to still look better than the Switch 2 version in the quality mode. And some other things you're going to notice here that the Switch 2 version likely won't have. It probably won't have as good of volumetric lighting as the PlayStation 5 version does. You can see here in the target demo, the lighting effects, post-processing effects, it's all on low here, but it still looks good. Just doesn't look as good as the PS5 version, but you're getting the exact same overall look of the game, I would say. It still looks fantastic in this target demo. And these are the types of concessions I would expect them to do for a game like this on Switch 2, and to have fans of the series be very, very happy with this, actually, because I really don't see anything wrong with how this looks, besides it looking slightly downgraded a bit from the PlayStation 5 version, especially with the things like the hair, like we talked about before. Hair resolution, shadows, those are all going to look lower quality on Switch 2. Again, nothing we shouldn't be surprised about for the Switch 2, but for what they're doing with the console, it's extremely impressive, I would say. So, yeah, I would say this is a really good idea of what the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to look like in 2026. And likely they're probably going to release this sometime in early 2026, maybe in the first half at least. They did say they are working on the game and it's progressing very well on Switch 2, so I don't expect this game to be too far out after Final Fantasy VII Remake is released as well. Maybe, yeah, it could be actually the summertime of 2026, somewhere around there. And they're also making Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 on Switch 2 as well, but they didn't say they're working on it right now. Obviously, they got some other versions that they're working on. First and foremost, perhaps the PlayStation 5 version is first, or maybe they're working on the PC version and PS5 in conjunction, and Switch 2 is coming to be ported later. We just don't know yet, but we do know Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is well in development on Switch 2, and this could be what the game is going to look like. And yeah, let me know what you think about that, though. Do you think that is something that you think is possible, and you think that you'll be happy with that? Or is that you think the graphics are too downgraded here for this demo? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. But we also have Star Wars Outlaws. They released a demo of the game on Switch 2 and the PC. I already had a demo, and I did a graphics comparison between the two. So let's take a look at that really quick. Star Wars Outlaws on the PC and Switch 2. Now, This is the Switch 2 version of the demo of Star Wars Outlaws versus maximum settings 4K on PC, running with all the bells and whistles, ray tracing, everything is turned on to the absolute max on this game versus Switch 2. The only thing I did on the PC version is I matched the 30 frames per second output so you can get a similar look, so it doesn't look, you know, kind of confusing. One game's looking way smoother as far as frame rate. It can be visually confusing in that way, so they're both running at 30 frames, but the visual quality is at maximum on PC. So, as you can see here, so far so good, I would say. Looks pretty good.
Was recently arrested by a small-time sheriff for looting vaporators. Not very legendary.
Character models don't look quite as good as the PC version, and the biggest downgrade, most noticeable and distracting downgrade from this entire port, I would say, is the hair of Kay. If they actually just fixed the hair and the self-shadowing issues that they have on the character model in certain lighting, this port would be nearly perfect in my opinion. But unfortunately,
what, you don't trust aliens?
they still got some work to do on that. The hair still looks pretty glitchy.
That's fair.
You know, I don't know exactly how they're working their shadows in this game. If it's all ray trace shadows, then they may not be able to turn it off. It's hard to say. But besides that, this game looks really, really good on Switch 2, I would say. Very impressive. And they did a really good job of making this look just like Star Wars Outlaws. And this is versus a $4,000 PC. This is my PC. I'm running on a 9800X 3D CPU and an RTX 5090. Maximum settings at 4K. Ray tracing's on completely. And versus the $450 portable system Switch 2. And this is what you're getting. I would say this is pretty darn impressive. Granted, you're getting downgrades here in the visuals, yes, but the image quality looks very, very good. Looks very clean for Switch 2, besides the hair artifacts, as we talked about before. And when you take a look at the actual like in-game cutscenes and certain other aspects of the levels, they did cut out some of the, you know, objects here and there. Some of the textures are downgraded. Some of the rubble on the ground has been kind of cut back. But the overall look of the game is extremely similar. I mean, like, if you play this game on your own, you would not really know what you're missing because it looks like the same game. You see what I mean? It's not like when you play some of these Switch 1 ports that you actually feel like you're missing out on the full game because so much of the game is neutered on the Switch 1. You're not getting that with Switch 2. You're getting the actual same experience, just with cutbacks here and there. And that's a huge, huge difference versus what we were getting with Switch 1. So this is extremely impressive. If we go forward here a little bit, see some of the gameplay. The cutscenes are one thing, but gameplay is another, right?
There's always more of them.
So when you actually go into gameplay, I mean, it's the same experience. You're getting the same nice lighting effects, the nice image quality, and you're getting the same combat experience. You're not getting big drops in frame rate, none of that stuff. So like you're getting a really nice experience here on Switch 2 versus the best way to play the game, which is on the PC. At maximum settings, you're getting a game that is pretty much exactly the same.
And I just want to talk to him.
And yeah, like I said before, some of these cutscenes, for example, when she's not in certain lighting, they look really good because these shadows are not artifacting because the lighting is not hitting her in just the right way. Yeah, so like I said, if they just fix this, because if you notice when you play this game, from what I've noticed is that Kay is pretty much one of the only characters in the game that has this problem, and you see this character throughout the entire game. all these aliens and all these other humanoid creatures that or people that she's talking to, they don't have this type of hair. So they don't have any type of artifacts when you talk to them. They look just fine, like him. You would make it makes sense, right? But so yeah, if they could find a way to fix the hair in this game just for the main character, I think this port would be pretty much as perfect as you could get it at this point for Switch 2. And we'll go forward a little bit more here. And this game has a time of day system, okay? Even on the demo, it doesn't matter. So when I played the demo on the PC, it had overcast skies, and on the Switch 2 version, it had clear skies. So you're going to get more fog on the PC version here, and you're going to get clear skies on the Switch 2 version. That can change, though, depending on when you play the game. This is not a graphical downgrade. This is actually just a time of day issue that you're going to run into in this game. You're going to get, you know, bright skies, you're going to get nighttime, and you're also going to get cloudy and foggy and dusty times, especially on a planet like Tatooine. But you're not missing out on any of those graphical effects on Switch 2. They're still there. It's just depending on when you play the game, you're not going to see certain effects. Okay? And this game does have better textures on PC on the ground. As far as the distance is concerned, you can see more detail because it's just higher resolution. But it still looks very similar on Switch 2. Alright, go forward here a little bit to this part right here. Again, similar lighting effects, similar textures, a little bit lower quality objects. What'd you say your name was again? And of course, the artifacting of the hair is still there.
Just tell them I'm working on it.
You got it, K-Bess. See you soon.
But yeah, this is really impressive, and some of the lighting effects is different. Some of the GI, the global illumination, is a little bit different on Switch 2.
That must be it.
But when you compare them side by side, you're getting an extremely similar gameplay experience here. And you take a look at the post-processing effects here. Very impressive lighting. Nice explosions on Switch 2. It's the same as on PC. The PC is just rendering them at a much higher resolution. You're running this at 4K. The PC version is rendering this like at 4 times the resolution with maximum details at all times. And the Switch 2 is using some cutbacks, but they're doing things very smartly in that you're not going to notice certain aspects when you're playing the game that are being cut back. And look at that. The post-processing effects, explosions, all this stuff looks great on Switch 2. Does it look as good as the $4,000 PC? No, it doesn't, but side by side though, these are definitely comparable. They're very similar looking games, even though one is substantially less powerful than the other. So this is a fantastic sign for things to come on Switch 2. This means that optimization is actually going to be a thing, like big time on Switch 2. It's going to make a gigantic difference. Optimizing games on Switch 2 is going to make much more of a difference than versus Switch 1 ever could dream of. And it also is kind of a call out to developers in general, like, what is going on? Like, my question in regards to that is, and when I say that, it's like, what is going on with a lot of these games that are unoptimized? Like, if you just spend a little bit more time on your game, and I'm talking about like PC ports in general, other games that come out broken and just choppy frame rates, even on really high-spec PCs. Like, this game ran poorly on PC, for example, Star Wars Outlaws, on an RTX 4090 when it was released over a year ago. So, and it's because it was poorly optimized. You're telling me that the Switch 2 can run the game at a smoother frame rate than the PC version on a substantially less powerful device? It can if it's optimized to do so, and you're not optimizing on PC, then yes, if you're going to optimize for the lower spec console to run it that well, then you can do it. And they're proving it right here. So this is a great argument for developers to spend a little bit more time on your games. And since Switch 2 is probably going to be the #1 console, of course, going to overtake the other consoles, just came out a few months ago, but since Switch 2 is likely going to be the leader in the gaming industry for sales, it's almost a foregone conclusion that a lot of developers are going to be targeting their games for Switch 2 first and foremost, and go from there after that. And it looks like the opposite is true as well. They can actually target games to run on Switch 2 after the fact, after, you know, they're already been ported to other consoles and PC. They can still port them over to Switch 2, and that's a really great sign. But the future is really bright, because what this means is, going forward, the Switch 2, if they do target it to be the lead platform on all these games, it means you're going to be getting great looking games that look like, you know, like this, basically Star Wars Outlaws, and run great, at least at 30 frames solid, because they're optimizing for the console. And then everybody else will get their versions of the games as well, with maybe better textures, better frame rates, but the core experience will not be missed out on Switch 2. And I think that, my friends, is what we're looking forward to with this console moving forward, and that's why I'm excited for this Nintendo console, because the potential is through the roof. Alright guys, thanks so much for your support. Please hit that like button, leave me a comment, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.